Now we are live. Welcome to Talking Shop. I hope you had an amazing intro. I hope the music came in good. I hope Daniel Dominguez, my great friend, and his amazing wife, Ren, they created a Good Brother, new Good Brother music. And why did we need Good Brother music? I don't know. Why not, right? So there's so many different renditions with the Good Brothers. I always do this with my nose. Everyone's always like, what kind of addictions do you have? You're always, listen, enough, all right? Look, now that Talking Shop is live on Triller Plus, live on the Roku channel, live on YouTube, we got deals everywhere. We can talk about this, right? Look at it. Been wrestling for 23 years. I've started training 25 years ago. Look at the skinniness of my nose. Now that we're video, now that we're out there, I'm not scared to put myself out there. It's fine. I'm already out there. Everybody's seen me in all different kinds of ways. I don't mind being the butt of jokes. But look at my little nose. I can't explain how many times it's probably been shattered or broken. But every time I do this, I bet he's, I'm always doing this. Like he's either picking his nose or he's snorting something. No, it's not that. I've never done that, by the way. It's just the fact that my nose has been obliterated a million times. I wrestled in New Japan Pro Wrestling for 8 years. You know how many times those guys, which they only know how to throw forearms, mistakenly forearmed my stupid little bird nose? Huh? Busted it. Now that we're on a tangent, but welcome, Talking Shop. Clearly, I'm solo today. Last week, we planned on shooting a Talking Shop live on the road because that's what I always thought Talking Shop was always so unique. Talking Shop was created over a decade ago in Tokyo, Japan, when 2014, Rocky and myself, and it was my idea. I said, dude, we got to start a podcast. Not because we want to review matches, we want to review the Royal Rumble, or we want to review this or that. I just thought our lives were so interesting and so different because, we were in Japan for, a month, for 4 weeks, 5 weeks at a time. I'd go home to my kids for 10 days. I'd go back on the road for a month. I'd go back to my kids for 8, 9, 10 days in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'd go back to Japan, all over Japan for, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks sometimes. And we created Talking Shop that way because we just wanted people to see us living in Japan, wrestling in Japan. We were drinking a lot of beer in Japan when the match was over, and we would sit and talk. And that's why I thought our podcast was so interesting and so different, because it wasn't reviewing there's so many people that just review matches now and review shows and review and have their opinions on things, which is great. Everyone should have that, and I'm glad that there's a platform for it. But it's like ESPN now, right? Or there's analysts all over the place. And so I look at ourselves as full-blown broadcast journalists. That's what we are. The big LG and myself. Now, with that said, I'm clearly here by myself because the big LG and myself, we both have babies. You can't write our lives, right? Once the big LG came into my life at the end of 2013, when we became a tag team and were forced to be a tag team. And now we're just forced to be a tag team because we keep getting hired by companies together and then fired by companies together. So clearly we're together. Something about it either really works or it doesn't work. I don't know what it is. But clearly we're a tag team and we're just going with it. But we both ended up having babies at the same exact time. That's where he is. He's having a day with his baby and his family, his life, and I'm able to sit down and do a pod. Listen, Talkin' Shop goodbrothers@gmail.com. That's TALKN Good Brothers, GOODBROTHERS, Good Brothers, Talkin' Shop goodbrothers@gmail.com. I got a ton of emails. I'm not getting to them today. Just being honest, right? And now that we're in this video form, and when you go to Triller Plus, bam. You go to Triller Plus, you see us right there on the front of the page. You go to the Roku channel, STGN49, bam, out of Atlanta. You got the boys. You go to our YouTube, the Talkin' Shop YouTube channel. You can follow me at Machine Gun KA. You can follow Gallows at the big LG on all social media platforms. But I got a lot of emails. I wanted to get to this. Listen, we're not a podcast that likes to review things. I remember when we were with the WWE recently in January. I was hurt. And we kind of did a rundown of the Royal Rumble. And I was thinking, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? First off, let me say this. Hawkeyes. Iowa Hawkeyes. I hope I got that right. Jeez, I'm not a fan, but with that said, I like the hat. Now, a Good Brother fan, a phenomenal Good Brother fan, and friend now, Jerry, the great Jerry. Anyways, I saw him in Milwaukee a couple weeks ago when we did a show called Brew City Wrestling for Frankie DeFalco, promoter out of Milwaukee. And the great Jerry brought me a hat. We have the greatest fans of all time who just turn into friends, and they drive hours to just see us and then give me gifts like this. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate you. Obviously, I'm wearing a Bullet Club jacket today because that's what this show's about. And it's fitting that it's only me inside the shop today because, it's brought to you by Rode Mics. They sent us a shitload of awesome mics, and we appreciate Rode for that. This episode is brought to you by Max Effort Muscle, maxeffortmuscle.com. Go there for all your supplemental needs. We get a ton of emails. I've said that like 5 times today, but we get a ton of emails, people asking me, what was the rendition of the Bullet Club, or how did the Bullet Club start? Who started the Bullet Club? Why did the Bullet Club start? Because clearly the Bullet Club was a force in the business, especially in 2013, right? When it was formed. But it's not about a force in the business. It just happened to be something that caught on. And we get so many emails about what was it like when it first started. And it just took me back to think about it. And I actually took some notes. And why not do it right now? The beginning of the Bullet Club. See, 2013, if you can take yourself back to that, and of course you can go to New Japan World, you can watch the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling. There's so much good stuff on there. There's so much good stuff on there. You can see all of the Machine Gun matches. You can see all of the Tanahashi matches. You can see all of the Shinsuke Nakamura matches, all the AJ Styles matches. But see, in 2013, that was the middle of like Hiroshi Tanahashi's phenomenal run. Like, was that his best year? Was that Tanahashi's best year? Maybe. I'm not a historian. Like, for example, Dave Meltzer and Alvarez. They clearly they have studied wrestling and watched wrestling, and especially New Japan Pro Wrestling or Japanese wrestling for years. So if I'm thinking right, if I remember right, I remember when I went to New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2008, and I believe the Great Muta, or Keiji Muto, the Great Muta. He has his alter egos. But Muto had won the title and then just blew through every baby face the entire year, which I believe was 2008 or 9 or whatever it was, and then he finally put over Tanahashi at the Tokyo Dome. And so that, 2010, 11, 12, 2013 was Tanahashi's like classic runs, right? And so 2013, at this time, it was Tanahashi. It was, the rise of Okada. Okada had just won the G1 the year before, prior in 2012. So that was the beginning of Okada's run, right? Shinsuke Nakamura, multiple time, IWGP Intercontinental Champion, multiple time IWGP champion for years prior to that. So which gaijin or foreigners, as they call the foreigners in Japan, gaijin, which gaijin were on top there at that time? Like, myself and Giant Bernard A-Train from the old WWE days. He went back to WWE for new fans in 2012 as Lord Tensai, which was, we can have our own episode about that anytime. But there wasn't a top foreign act in New Japan Pro Wrestling at the time. 2013, there just wasn't. And something clicked. And for some reason, there were 4 guys there at this exact time who had never been to WWE, had never been to, TNA, or there was no AEW at the time, or there were 4 foreigners there in Japan that were not famous around the world. And that's Prince Devitt, Tox Fale, Carl Anderson, myself, and Tama Tonga. And, and at that time, if I'm remembering correctly, at the beginning of that Bullet Club era, the beginning of the Bullet Club, which everyone remembers the main shirt, right? The shirt with this skull on there. Whoever created that did great and made New Japan Pro Wrestling millions. Good for them. But there was an original shirt that no one thinks of, unless you're a real, true OG of the Bullet Club, which I don't even think I have one. But if I remember correctly, we were all living in the dojo. So foreigners would come over to Japan, like MVP, Shelton Benjamin, Strongman, Giant Bernard, Lance Archer at the time. I'm just trying to think of the names that came over. Brian Kendrick. Who else? When Rocky would come. But they would all stay at the Tokyo Dome Hotel when they stayed when they stayed for New Japan Pro Wrestling. But not me, not Prince Devitt, not Tama Tonga, and not Fale, because we'd been in the system and we were in Japan all the damn time. They had us at the dojo in Futako Tamagawa, Japan. Tamazatsumi Shogakko was the bus stop. I mean, this is shit that is coming to my mind. Futako Tamagawa Eki, which means Futako Tamagawa train station. Megarodori Kampachi crossing is what we would tell the taxi when we were hammered in Roppongi or Shibuya and we had to get back to the dojo. Doko, which means where, the taxi guy would say, and I'd say Megarodori Kampachi, it's 2 main roads that every taxi driver knows. They know that it's a big crossing. And when we would get to Megarodori and Kampachi crossing, he would say, okay, megalodone kampachi. I'd say, straightto. So straightto means obviously straight. Now, I don't know if straightto is the right terminal or the right language, if straightto is straight in Japan or not. But when we go down the road, the traffic light, shingo. Shingo means traffic light. Migi means right. I say shingo migi onegaishimasu means turn right, please, at the light. Or shingo hidari onegaishimasu. Hidari means left. It's those little things that reminded me, but I think that's what it was. My point for telling you all of that is the four of us were living together in the dojo. We were there all the time together. And we all wanted something huge to happen. Now, did we know that that was going to happen the way it was? I don't know. But I do know that we wanted it. You know, it all started, honestly, in April of 2013. Finn Balor, Prince Devitt, and myself, we knew that we had a heel turn coming in May. I was doing my thing. I was doing a babyface run. Prince Devitt was in a very successful tag team called Apollo 55 with Taguchi. They were the junior tag team champions all the time. You know, Prince Devitt, as you can see where he's gone on to WWE, he's gone on to be a huge household name. Everybody knows him. But here's the thing is, you know, he always wanted more as well. And so in April of 2013, I still remember this, I can still see it, at Ryogoku Sumo Hall. He turns on Taguchi. And that's the first time they've ever seen Prince Devitt as a heel inside New Japan Pro Wrestling. But does everybody understand, though, that Prince Devitt had been there since 2006? So Prince Devitt and myself lived together in the Santa Monica, Los Angeles dojo, just trying to get the opportunity to go to Japan. Well, in March of 2006, Prince Devitt gets hired under a young boy contract, a dojo training contract. He moves to Japan. He's there for 2 years before I finally come over in March of 2008. So Prince Devitt basically had 7 years of a babyface run, a real babyface stuff, and he was over. He was over. So him finally turning on Taguchi was a big deal. And that happened right there live in Tokyo. But see, the glue to that, though, was the fact that he was a babyface for 7 straight years. He'd never done heel stuff. So he finally turns on Taguchi, and he's a heel. But here's what I love about New Japan Pro Wrestling. So they'd hired a guy named Tox Fale, who ends up becoming Bad Luck Fale. Fale's background has nothing to do with professional wrestling. Fale is a Tongan who lived and grew up in New Zealand. He speaks Tongan. He speaks English. He speaks perfect Japanese. So Fale is a Tongan who grew up in New Zealand. He becomes a rugby player. High school in New Zealand. Boom, he signs to come to Tokyo, to Japan. If I'm remembering correctly, he went to a university in Fukuoka, Japan. And I want to make sure, I don't know if I'm 100% right on that. Let me see if my notes are in here. No, I should have asked him. But Fale signs to come to university in Japan to play rugby. So he goes to university. He plays amazing university rugby. Boom, he plays professional rugby in Japan. He ends up leaving that. It's a long story. Maybe someday we'll have him on and talk about it. I don't want to get into his personal stuff, but the reason he left rugby doesn't matter. He leaves rugby and he doesn't have a job. Well, New Japan Pro Wrestling does open tryouts. I don't know if people know this or not. Now, you've got to really look at this. Now, we'll have him on someday and talk about it. We'll do a deep dive and we'll discuss this. But Fale needed a job. And now New Japan does open tryouts. They have guys come in that want to be pro wrestlers and they squat them to death and they do push-ups to death and they run them to death and they bump them to death. And it's fucking crazy. Well, Fale passes that test, and they bring him in and hire him and have him come in the dojo where he cooks chanko, and he learns the ways of the young boys in Japan. So he's got full-blown Japanese because he learned it through university, and he's a smart guy. So now they treat him exactly like they treat one of their own. He's not looked at as a foreigner. He's looked at as a Japanese young boy inside the dojo, and they treat him as such, which is a little stiff. They treated me incredible. I didn't get yelled at often. Like if I did something wrong, I didn't get yelled at. Fale got yelled at a lot. But my point with that is he had to train from scratch. They put him in as young boy matches. It's where you wrestle for like a year. You're in the first, second match, and you just lose. Then, bam, they send you off on what they call an excursion, and that's how you learn, right? And so he went to Japan, or he went to England. He went to America. He did some indies. Well, he finally comes back. I tell you all that to give the background of what Fale was. Well, Fale's return to New Japan Pro Wrestling was bam. April, Ryogoku 2013. He helps Prince Devitt turn on Taguchi. And people say that essentially was the beginning of the Bullet Club, and it's not, but that's what set everything in motion. Now he goes from just young boy Tox Fale wearing blue tights to now he's wearing all black. He's dyed his goat teeth blonde. And at this time, he had a little mohawk still. He still had hair, and so we used to call him a little chicken because he would dye the top of his hair blonde. And so April of 2013, just a month before the day that everyone calls the Bullet Club birthday, May the 3rd. So a month before May the 3rd, April, Ryogoku, we set the stage with Prince Devitt's heel turn at the April Sumo Hall Ryogoku show in Tokyo, which is a huge show. That's a 10,000-seater. That sets the stage, right? And now what was I doing around this time? Carl Anderson, the Machine Gun. So I'd been there since 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. So in 2008, I was basically a young boy, quote unquote. 2009, Baldo, Giant Bernard, A-Train, and myself were put together as a tag team. First off, I went in 2008 And in 2009, in January 4th of 2009 was my first Tokyo Dome match. So my first Wrestle Kingdom was 2009. And it was, I always say it was the most expensive 8-man tag of all time in Japan. I just was saying that jokingly. But my debut Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo Dome was myself, Giant Bernard, Ishii, and Iizuka. If you remember, New Japan Pro Wrestling fans, he wore the cast, the arm cast. It was the 4 of us on a team versus Masahiro Chono, huge Japanese legend. And if you remember the NWO days, Chono-san would come out with the glasses. Riki Choshu, which I'm not sure he did much in America, but absolute legend and wrestling household name in Japan. Their partners were Kevin Nash and Kurt Angle. And so that was my first Wrestle Kingdom. And Kurt Angle made me tap out with an ankle lock. That's pretty cool. You know, for a guy that just got a job for the first time, you know, less than a year before I got to have that match, that was my very first Wrestle Kingdom. But they put Giant Bernard and I together. We won our first G1 Tag League in the end of 2009. 2010, I had a Tokyo Dome match, you know, with the I'm trying to think who it was, the Dudleys. Team 3D. And Yujiro and Naito. So, I mean, I was very busy in the tag team world. Giant Bernard and I won the IWGP Tag Team Championships sometime in 2010, 11. Giant Bernard ends up signing back with WWE in 2012 and going back to WWE. So then now I'm by myself. They used me as a singles wrestler. I had a nice run in the New Japan Cup. They were using me as a babyface. I had a good showing in the 2012 G1, the G1 Climax tournament, which is the biggest tournament of in Japan, the biggest tournament in New Japan Pro Wrestling, where they still really, really get into tournaments. I did well in that G1 Climax where I had good matches. I got a bonus at the end of that, like a real money bonus. Everyone knows that storylines aren't real. This business is a work. But like New Japan Pro Wrestling, at the end of the President Sugabayashi-san, at the end of the tour, like we'd always have like a little meeting, and then he would hand people some envelopes. He would call them out and say, you know, congratulations, great for having good matches throughout. And I think it probably made some people pissed off or whatever, but like 2 or 3 years in a row, I got a nice envelope at the end, you know. And so when you're a kid, and you know, everyone needs money, but I'm not gonna, you know, in 2012 I really needed money. You know, when you open your envelope and you've got an extra couple, you know, you've got money in there, it's like, wow. So yeah, and then, you know, I had a big match with Tanahashi in Hiroshima in February of 2013, where they gave me an opportunity to main event, and it did really well. The Hiroshima Sun Plaza, if you want to go look it up, sold out. If you want to go look it up, Tanahashi versus Carl Anderson, February of 2013, Hiroshima Sun Plaza. It was good. It was good. And I think that that was probably the beginning of, hey, I think that you know, they gave me an opportunity to do some main events, and I did good. I think I'd earned my respect in the company a little bit. But then they're probably thinking, like, you know, what do we do with them? Are we going to put the title on them? You know, they probably weren't going to put the title on me. So it's like we got Prince Devitt here that we're about to push and try to knock into the main event scene. You know, maybe maybe we put the boys together. And Prince Devitt and myself were already best buddies, always living together, stuck together in the dojo. But see, and then the other one, the fourth member that actually brings it all together, which I wasn't sure he would. I wasn't sure he would. I knew he was talented. But I just didn't know, how it would all mix up. But, it brings us to Tama Tonga. And now we look at what Tama Tonga has done, where he's at, how he's doing. Great. Clearly a success. Clearly a life success. He's got 3 kids. Good dad. Clearly a wrestling success. Had an amazing, decade-long career, over decade-long career in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Just signed recently with WWE. So if anybody watched, if you're watching WWE now, you've seen Tama Tonga doing his yeah. But I remember they said, hey, the son of Haku is coming over. The son of Haku is coming to New Japan Pro Wrestling. They put him right in the dojo. He wasn't trained. He wasn't highly trained. He didn't have a ton of matches. He had to come to New Japan Pro Wrestling and learn the wrestling business, right? So he came there. He lived in the dojo. We connected right away. When you're stuck together and around each other all the time, dude, you just become friends or you start hating each other, and sometimes a little bit of both. But Tama was always in, he was always in multi-man matches. The people started to like him. He dressed like Jimmy Snuka. He would do some flying things. Sometimes he would team with us. Sometimes he wouldn't. When Giant Bernard left and went back to New Japan when Matt went to WWE, and left me in New Japan Pro Wrestling, that opened a hole for Tama Tonga to start teaming with me a lot as well. And they did put him together with me. And then even when I would do big singles matches, which I had a lot of singles matches in between in there before we did this turn. And even in the G1 final, which I've turned into a gimmick, I wish I didn't. But why not? Who cares? But Tama Tonga, if you go and watch that match back, he was my second. He was out there standing right beside me. He was out there beside me when I walked out and wrestled Tanahashi in the match before that. He walked out with me when I wrestled Okada in Ryogoku. So we were becoming very, very, very tight. Now, we knew that we were going to do this turn, a month before, right? They had told us about it in April that we were going to do this turn. So May the 3rd comes. May the 3rd, 2013 is, if you're a Bullet Club fan or a wrestling historian fan, you understand that May the 3rd, 2013 is a big day. It was a cool day. It started something that obviously morphed into something much, much, much bigger than what we could have ever expected. I definitely didn't think that we would go on to do merch sales the way that we did, and still can do. We're still selling these hats right here. Look at that right there. Big LG even sold me that. May the 3rd, 2013, it's called Wrestling Dantaku. That's always the yearly show, May the 3rd, whatever year in Fukuoka, Japan. That's way down south on the Hakata Island of Japan. I had a match, myself versus Tanahashi. It was okay. It wasn't the banger that we had previously in February. And I'll tell you the reason why I believe is because it was kind of the same match that we had previously in February. But with that said, Fukuoka is a little bit of a different crowd. Like, so, Hiroshima, I've always kind of noticed, no matter what, if we're like in the Green Dome or the Green Arena or the Hiroshima Sun Plaza, if I'm remembering correctly, Hiroshima it's a countryside town where you can get reactions, really good reactions. Like if you go into Georgetown, Kentucky, or wherever, Kentucky or whatever. Fukuoka is the same style. It's a countryside town, but they're a little quieter. Hiroshima is a little more of an excited town. Fukuoka, typically, when I look back through all the years and the boys telling me, it reminds me of like Pittsburgh, where you can get some pops. You get the pops, of course, but sometimes they're just a little quiet. And so the match was okay, but I remember just thinking, they're not rocking like you wish they would. But then now don't get me wrong, I've seen Fukuoka going crazy. So that's not an excuse. I'm just saying, sometimes depending on everything, Fukuoka can be a little quieter of a crowd. Now I've seen Fukuoka going crazy, but I've also seen Fukuoka being a little weird, right? I just remember the match was okay, right? But then Prince Devitt comes down to the ring with Fale. And Tom was already out there with me because he's seconds with me, right? And so Prince Devitt's telling me to beat up Tanahashi. So he starts beating up Tanahashi, and he's yelling at me, doing the shooter sign. And I think the people started chanting, if I'm remembering correctly, go back on New Japan World and watch, but I believe they started chanting Anderson. Maybe they were also chanting Tanahashi. I just don't remember. I think they were chanting Anderson. Now, don't get me wrong. They've chanted Anderson a lot. So they did start to come up a little bit, and then, bam, I hit Tanahashi with a cutter, and we start beating up Tanahashi, and Tama joins in, and we start beating up Tanahashi, the four of us. We put him over. We get a shot for the magazine, which I don't think was a very. So usually you set the guy in the middle of the ring, and you do some kind of pose, and you see all the cameras clicking because media is always going to be there, especially for the big shows. Now, in my opinion, that should have been the front page of the magazine, probably, especially looking back on it now with the way the Bullet Club did and was. But if I think correctly, if I remember correctly, I could go back and probably find the magazine. It was probably a little picture like this somewhere in the middle of the magazine. But I do know that when we finally were able to stand there in the middle of the ring and do the too sweet sign, and it was only called a too sweet sign, I think, when we started calling it the too sweet sign. I don't know. But when we all stood there and we did that in the middle of the ring, that we were finally forced, bringing this force together and doing this. Nobody was doing this, besides the NWO and the Clique and stuff. But we were such fans. So, when the four of us, we were such fans of, the guys that paved the way before us. And we thought this is an opportunity for us to just make this our thing. That we were excited to make the Bullet Club have this signal. And it's obviously stuck. It's obviously stuck, right? But when the four of us stood together, put the sign up, it did shock the crowd. It was definitely immediate heat. It was immediate heat. And we went to the back and we cut our first promo. And I think Prince Devitt said, "We are the Bullet Club," right? And that was Prince Devitt's idea to name it. We were trying to think of a name for the stable, and I didn't know. I was thinking, what do we do? And then when Finn said Bullet Club, I thought, great. New Japan loved it, and we were off to the races. In the first promo that we did backstage is a good one. We're all back there slamming beers back in Fukuoka, Japan. Fans called and left messages for the New Japan Pro Wrestling office, very angry when we did that. Very angry. I remember the office coming up to me and saying, "Hey, just say." So as we continued through June, I think Prince Devitt won the junior weight tournament, the Super Juniors. He won it. I think he went boom straight through, like 8-0, undefeated. And the whole time we were cheating and helping him win, And fans were calling and leaving messages to the office like, fuck these guys, man. Bullet Club sucks. They were so pissed. The booking was instantly different. Like they were allowing us to do whatever we wanted. And I think instantly it just gave us something. It gave us instant credibility. It helped Prince Devitt move because before, you got to remember, before that, dude, you had to stay in your weight class. And they didn't like the little, the juniors wrestling the heavyweights. And someday I'll get into what, maybe someday we'll do a deep dive on what people were telling me. Because Prince Devitt was known as a junior weight. Now, don't get me wrong. We're basically the same size, and he's obviously ripped. But he was known as a junior weight. I was known as a heavyweight. So I had guys pulling me aside and telling me, like, listen, like, you're the heavyweight. You're the leader. And I'm going, I don't care about that. Like, let's just, whoever has the big match, let them be the leader, and this is Prince Devitt's push, let him, I don't mind helping Prince Devitt up. This is going to help all of us. Someday I'll get into that. And that was just the Japanese guys in the office and maybe some of the bookers pulling me aside, just like they do in every company. Someday I'll get into that and talk about it, but it's just pointless now. But this gave Prince Devitt instant credibility. He had a match with Tanahashi for the championship, and instantly people thought he was going to win. And that was crazy because with him being the junior champion, back in the day, that wasn't even a possibility. It elevated Tama and Fale immediately. And look at Tama. If you think about Bullet Club now, you think about Tama Tonga. Tama Tonga and Bullet Club are just meshed together. And for some reason, whatever we did clicked so well that it immediately went, as viral as things could go back then, right? Wouldn't you say Bullet Club went viral for whatever reason? Bullet Club. Bullet Club. Look at that. Remember, there was even thoughts of, what do we want to call this? How about we call it the real? Because we were saying, we're real shooters. I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I am. Real shooters. They were like, maybe you guys are called the real. And I was like, whatever. Well, what if we were called The Real? The Real. You know, you could say that sounds stupid, but I bet people thought when they first heard the word Bullet Club, it sounded stupid. I don't know. But listen, no matter how you look at it, which way you look at it, May the 3rd, 2013, it changed pro wrestling, right? You know, and then I think in future pods, we have to cover Prince Devitt signing with WWE and leaving at the same time AJ Styles comes in and then takes Bullet Club to another level. Then Kenny Omega coming in. Then the Young Bucks coming in. Or sorry, the Bucks and Gallows came in before that. Then AJ Styles coming in. You know, then Kenny Omega coming in. And then the boys, us leaving, you know, Gallows, Anderson, AJ Styles leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling and then leaving an opportunity for the elite, you know, the boys, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, the elite just taking Bullet Club to a global expansion. I think it's fitting that I did this pod solo today because I was the only one that was there. You know, like even Gallows would have to just give his opinion on what he would have been thinking was going on when he was watching. I'd love to talk about Gallows coming in because, you know, Bullet Club was formed in May of 2013. The Young Bucks came in October of 2013. Gallows comes at the end of November and December of 2013. So it'd be really cool to get all their opinions on the early renditions of the Bullet Club, which leading into 2014, where the Bullet Club really fucking took off, right? When AJ came in, and then Kenny Omega came in. And then you could feel it. You could feel the shift at this point that, hey, we're starting to get over. Like, this is pretty crazy. But let me wind this down. I've already blabbed too long. Talking Shop, all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, find us. Live on the Roku channel, STGN49, live on Triller, and then go to Triller Plus and watch Lariato Pro. Talking Shop presents Lariato Pro. Appreciate you guys for the support. Talking Shop, goodbrothers@gmail.com. I cannot thank the Good Brother world, the Good Brother fans, the Talking Shop world, the Talking Shop fans enough. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. Keep following us. Sign up for Triller Plus and check us out. I'm out of here.
Good Brother Corn.